The two World Cups there are two World Cups happening in 2026. One is what you see on television, the glittering stadiums, the roaring crowds, the golden trophy lifted under fireworks. That is the World Cup FIFA wants you to watch. But there is another World Cup happening in the shadows, one built on broken promises, displaced families, and billion-dollar corruption. That is the World Cup this video is going to show you. Stay with me, because what you are about to learn will completely change how you watch the most viewed sporting event in human history. How the bid was really won. The united bid from the USA, Canada, and Mexico was always the heavy favorite. Not because it was the best footballing proposal, but because these three countries together represent the most commercially lucrative market on the planet, massive stadiums, enormous television audiences, and a combined economy that makes every FIFA sponsor salivate. The rival bid from Morocco had genuine grassroots support, the backing of large parts of Africa and the Arab world, and a real football culture behind it. FIFA's own evaluation report still rated it as higher risk, a technical assessment that conveniently justified the outcome FIFA already wanted. When the vote came in June 2018, the united bid won 134 votes to Morocco's 65. But what was happening behind the scenes tells a much darker story. FIFA's 2015 scandal saw over 40 football officials indicted for racketeering, wire fraud, and money laundering. Dozens pleaded guilty, and while Infantino promised reform, investigative journalists documented how backroom deals and vote trading simply continued in more subtle forms. The united bid won because it was the safest financial bet for an organization that has always prioritized revenue over romance. The expansion league FIFA expanded the World Cup from 32 to 48 teams for 2026. Infantino called it global inclusion. The reality is simpler. More teams means more games. More games means more broadcast hours. More broadcast hours means more advertising money. This is a commercial decision dressed up in the language of inclusion. The consequences for football are real. More mismatches, more one-sided games, longer schedules, higher player fatigue, and greater injury risk. The tight, dramatic structure of the 32-team tournament that produced some of the greatest moments in football history is being replaced with a bloated schedule that serves broadcasters, not fans. Host cities. Promises versus reality. 16 cities across 3 countries will host matches. On the surface, it looks like a celebration. Underneath, the reality is far more painful. FIFA requires host cities to hand over premium public spaces for official fan zones where only FIFA sponsors can operate. Local businesses are pushed out. Street vendors who could have benefited from millions of tourists are excluded entirely. The city gives up its public space. FIFA takes the profit. The displacement problem runs even deeper. Every major sporting event in modern history has followed the same pattern. Property values rise, rents increase, and low-income communities are priced out of neighborhoods their families have lived in for generations. Housing advocates in Los Angeles, New York, and Dallas are already documenting waves of speculation and landlord pressure, pushing vulnerable families out years before a single match is played. In Mexico, hundreds of millions were spent renovating Estadio Azteca to meet FIFA standards in a country where public hospitals are underfunded and rural schools lack basic resources. In Canada, critics in Toronto and Vancouver have raised serious questions about whether the promised legacy benefits will ever actually arrive. Studies of previous World Cup hosts consistently show those economic promises are overstated before the tournament and quietly forgotten after it. The labor question. The 2022 Qatar World Cup brought the labor issue to global attention when reporting estimated over 6,500 migrant workers had died since Qatar won hosting rights in 2010. The 2026 hosts have stronger labor laws on paper, but the story is not clean. Labor rights groups monitoring venue construction in the United States have documented wage theft, unsafe working conditions, and the systematic use of undocumented workers too vulnerable to report violations. In Mexico, construction workers have been paid below the legal minimum in heat conditions that violate safety standards with little recourse available to them. The media spotlight on these issues has been a fraction of what it was for Qatar, partly because the United States is harder to cast as a villain, and partly because the global sports media is too commercially invested in this tournament to look too closely. FIFA's money machine FIFA is a non-profit organization. Let that sit for a moment. The organization that controls the most commercially valuable sporting event on Earth, projected to generate between $11 and $14 billion from 2026 alone, pays minimal tax, operates with minimal transparency, and answers to almost no one outside its own internal structures. Broadcast rights are worth billions. Sponsorship deals with Adidas, Coca-Cola, and Visa are worth hundreds of millions each. And the host cities? They typically end up in a net negative financial position, paying for security, infrastructure, and coordination costs that exceed the direct economic benefits they receive. FIFA profits. Sponsors profit. Taxpayers pay the bill. Who actually gets to attend there is a beautiful fiction that the World Cup is a democratic festival for football fans from every nation. The reality is that ticket prices, travel costs, and hotel rates that will triple or quadruple in major American cities have made attending this tournament financially impossible for the majority of the world's football supporters. The seats will be filled primarily by corporate guests, wealthy tourists, and fans from rich nations who can afford the complete package. The passionate supporter cultures of Brazil, Argentina, West Africa, and Asia, the people who genuinely live and breathe this game, watch from screens at home, while the physical space of the tournament belongs to an entirely different demographic. The gap between the official narrative of global inclusion and the economic reality of who actually attends has never been wider. The environmental cost nobody talks about 48 teams, 104 games, 16 cities spread across an entire continent. The volume of air travel generated by fans, officials, media, and corporate guests flying on private jets will make the 2026 World Cup one of the highest carbon sporting events in human history. FIFA has made sustainability commitments. They are largely cosmetic. No amount of carbon offset purchasing neutralizes the mathematics of mass international air travel at this scale. The media's comfortable silence, the major sports broadcasters and newspapers all depend on FIFA for access to press conferences, training sessions, player interviews, and broadcast feeds. That access can be withdrawn from anyone seen as too critical. So the labor stories, the displacement stories, and the corruption stories get treated as niche concerns while the celebration dominates the coverage. A handful of investigative journalists at The Guardian and Der Spiegel have done important work exposing the truth, but most of the billions of people who will watch this tournament will do so with no awareness of the full story behind it. What do we do with this? The 2026 World Cup will produce moments of genuine beauty, extraordinary goals, underdog stories. Individual brilliance. Football always delivers that. And that is exactly why the organizations that control football are so powerful. They know the beauty of the game is enough to make most people look away from everything happening off the pitch. Now you know the full picture. What you do with that knowledge is entirely up to you.